This is going to be a good conversation. When I first became interested in the environment, it was, I was mentioning earlier, all the orchards were being torn down in our neighborhood, and I thought, my gosh, we're going to destroy the planet this way. What can we do about it? I was very entrepreneurial as a kid, so I started a candy store when I was 7 years old that actually flourished in the area and expanded into a snack place with selling beverages and in returnable containers at that time, which then disappeared from the marketplace. And I thought, this is a terrible thing. We need to be reusing and reducing and recycling these containers. And that was when I decided California had to have a bottle bill, so we would do this. And I with lots of other people in the course of time, carried that forward, and we wrote the CRV law in California that recycles beverage containers and lots of other products. And we've recycled about 500 billion so far under that system. I think that's cool, but what we really wanted to do was to reduce. And we didn't get that done in the state. We've recycled a lot of stuff, but we haven't reduced. Source reduction is supposed to be the real core objective of a sustainable system, and not just cutting consumption and making people suffer. It's enabling people to do more with less. So I'm really pleased to have some of my heroes on this panel here who are doing this work. And I'll just give you an overview of who's here, and then we'll begin with Nabil. But Nabil is going to tell you about the remanufacturing industry and how it is expanding. Kyle is going to talk about the repair movement and how people are fixing it. Yuly is going to talk about the footwear sector and the complex ways that we can drive down the waste and consumption in footwear. Sarah is an extraordinary digital and social media personality who distills these messages into forms that people can really understand and then apply it in their households. And Shawn talks about the back end of the system, how we do reverse logistics, how we get all these products that we have expanded out there and get them back so that we can reuse them again. So welcome to all of you. I'm going to start with Nabil. And Nabil, first of all, give us an overview of the work that you are doing. You're a combination of a scholar and an entrepreneur and an organizer, I think, of entrepreneurs. Tell us a bit about your work and how much material we realistically could eliminate from our economy through reuse, remanufacturing, and product life extension.
All right. First, I am just delighted to be here. What a great event, and I'm just honored to be here with the people that make things happen. So fantastic people on the panel. Just a little bit about history there about the source reduction and the work that I've done in the past many years. When I started, actually, I stumbled into I worked in design and manufacturing. I taught this for many years, and I stumbled into this, the remanufacturing area, and looking into a lot of diesel engines that can be remanufactured up to like 5-6 times using the same material that we actually fabricated before. If you look at the footprint of any product that we create, in most cases you would see that the highest impact of the highest contributor to that footprint of the product comes from material extraction and processing. That has significant impact on the entire footprint of a product. So if you can reuse this material 5-6 times, that has huge impact, not only on that, but it's also on the waste and emission associated with that. Recycled aluminum, for example, has the ability to actually use only 5% of the energy that we use in making, virgin aluminum. So in any case, so my work started in the remanufacturing area, where we can actually, in some product, we can show that we can actually reuse material, 85% of old materials, can reduce energy consumption by 75% and so on. So there was significant impact from that. Then in 2010 or so, I think the Ellen MacArthur was looking into the concept of the next frontier of what she wanted to do, and I was fortunate enough to work on the first book on circular economy, which really helped a lot, and I think it had huge impact in work in this area. You know, the next milestone for me was also the UNEP actually decided, United Nations Environment Program, decided to study this area, and I was fortunate enough to lead the initiative on circular economy, and we invented a term called value retention processes, and that's
value retention processes.
Yeah. And those are all of the processes, all the circular processes except recycling. We call this value retention because we don't smelt the material, we actually reuse it. And that have shown significant environmental benefit, significant economic benefit, and also the impact on source reduction globally. And the third milestone for me, and I don't want to say too much here, is the creation by the U.S. government. The U.S. government has 17 national institutes that work in areas that are critical to U.S. manufacturing competitiveness, manufacturing economy, and manufacturing and national security as well. And sustainable manufacturing and circular economy was labeled as one of those. And I competed for that creation of that institute with many others. And today we have a national institute for 9 years that has about 75 companies and 42 universities and 8 national labs and 32 trade associations. And we're focused on developing technology that address the knowledge gaps in this area, because I think a lot of times what we do is assuming that what we know today is that's it, and let's figure out solution based on what we know, and that's really a huge mistake. John Werner talked a lot about what we can do in the green chemistry area that we don't know today. There are a lot that we don't know today because we only have been paying attention to this area only for a few years, not for a long time. So I'm gonna stop here, but I think the message about source reduction, if you think about remanufacturing, we're talking about, you know, you can reuse a lot of the, again, if you think of diesel engine, jet engine, medical equipment, you're talking about reusing a lot of 85% of the old material without, we do some qualification, repairs, restoration, all of that to get the product back to like new condition.
Well, certainly from a global and national security perspective, there's an increasing appreciation of the need to recover these extremely valuable materials, the critical materials in particular, from the industrial system, so that we're not dependent on other countries and depleting these rare resources, but we're keeping them here and keeping them in flow. And it sounds like you have support from both sides, if you will, or across the political spectrum because of an understanding of the various benefits of a source reduction system.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually leaving here to Arizona at the end, at the end of the day, because the EU and the US are trying to collaborate on issues, especially critical minerals, for example. Today, we're talking about reuse and source reduction, all of that. In the critical minerals area, globally, we use only 1% to meet our needs, 1% recycled material, while physically and economically and technically we can use up 40 to 60% in many of those materials, but we only use 1%. So it shows how bad we are, even in the recycling area.
We have a long way to grow. Kyle, you are one of my heroes because, oh my gosh, in college, I think it was, you became as irritated as many of us do with products that break in trivial ways that require that we throw them out and go buy a new one. And you did something about that has now had state, national, even global impacts. Tell us about what you do and how iFixit became a success.
Yeah, so the default is you just throw it away, right? I was raised, it just doesn't make sense to fix things anymore. Well, when I was at university, I had worked my entire high school career to save up for a laptop. I remember it was an $1,800 laptop. I was making $6 an hour, so you can do the math on how much time I spent earning this laptop. Dropped off the bed onto the power plug, and it wouldn't turn on. If I wiggled it, I could get the light to blink. I was like, it's probably just a cracked thing inside it.
Yeah.
Let me just take it apart, and I can probably fix it. My grandfather had given me a soldering iron when I was going to school because he thought I was studying engineering. I was studying computer science. He didn't realize we never got to get inside. But this was my moment to take it apart. So I started taking it apart, and very quickly I got lost. It was complicated. There were lots of tabs and wires and connectors. And so I did, I think, what any of you would do, and I Googled it. Where's the service manual for this thing? And I couldn't find the repair manual anywhere. So I bumbled my way through the repair. I got the soldering iron out. I soldered the loose joint. And then I made the fatal mistake of going to bed with the computer taken apart. And then I was like, I'll put it back together in the morning.
Oh, no.
And the next day, I have all these pieces of, oh God, what have I done? So I desperately wanted the service manual. Eventually, I bumbled my way through, and I got the computer back together. But I was like, why is this hard? And so I did a little bit of research, and I learned that the repair manual had been online, but Apple had sent lawyers to censor it from the internet. They sent copyright DMCA takedowns and said, thou shalt not know how to fix your thing. And that kind of bothered me. And since then, I've learned that this is a very common tactic. There is a wonderful guy that runs a medical hospital equipment repair manual. He works at a children's hospital in Tanzania, and he fixes all kinds of things, including infant incubators. These are the isolettes that keep babies alive. And he has gotten half a dozen takedown notices from Draeger and other medical device manufacturers saying, do not teach anyone how to fix that infant incubator in your children's hospital in Tanzania, right? So this is ludicrous. We're using intellectual property law to prevent people from being able to fix physical things. So my reaction to this was, well, if I can't have their manual, maybe I can make my own. So now that I knew how to take the thing apart, I took it apart again, I took pictures, I started posting repair manuals. We did that for several years. It was working very well. We built a parts business on top of it. And then we started going to companies and saying, hey, look, this is clearly the enlightened path. If you just teach your customers to fix things, they will love you. And we can go from there, right? Like, everyone wants happier customers. And that fell totally on deaf ears. And so then I started working on some of these optional environmental standards, seeing if I could put, clauses in the environmental standards to say, hey, you get extra points if the battery is removable. And it was amazing how aggressively Apple and Samsung and others came in and completely vetoed that language. So then we said, okay, the nice approach is not working. It's time for the stick. And so I've spent the last 15 years passing right to repair laws around the world. We got the European Commission to ban glued-in batteries in smartphones. So starting next year, any smartphone in Europe is going to require a replaceable battery, which will be exciting. And we've passed 8 laws. Yeah. We've passed 8 right to repair laws across the United States, starting in New York, more recently in Texas, and then this year we passed one in Kansas that require manufacturers to post repair manuals for free online and sell parts to anyone who wants them. So that's exciting. We're at the beginning. Now we have the laws passed. Now the next step is we just released a report finding that 95% of appliance companies are out of compliance with our new law and haven't published manuals yet. So I would encourage you, the next time something breaks, ask the manufacturers for the manual, and then when they say no, forward me the email and I'll do something about it.
Fabulous, good. Now tell us who has, among all of the companies out there, you say 95% are not in compliance, who is the leader in compliance? Who's really led the way? You can name a couple of companies?
Sure, yeah. Well, so we came kind of full circle with Apple. So originally they were not making the manuals available. Now pretty much they are. So on Apple's website you can get manuals for the iPhone. That's really exciting. Google is speaking in a panel this afternoon. They've really led the way, not just in making manuals available, but then and parts. But then they've actually started advocating with us. And Stephen, who's speaking later this afternoon, has testified alongside me in many states saying, yes, we need to set this default access to repair, because if you think about, you're going to Walmart, you're going to buy a toaster. There's one that's $20, there's one that's $40. Which one is going to last longer? When the spring on the little latch breaks to hold the toast down, are you going to be able to get the part for the 40 or the, like, there's no way for a consumer to know.
Yeah.
So the free market is not acting as a signal up front. So this is where, you know, we have all kinds of laws regulating, like the toaster can't electrocute you. We need to do the same thing to protect society, to make sure that these products are fixable, that they're not disposable.
People need to be able to see up front when they're buying a product that these two products that look identical, where one is 40 and the other is 20, you need to be able to see if that $20 one is actually maybe better, and it can be, than the $40 one's going to last longer, but you can't see that in the price, you can't see that in the descriptions. And
so we're working on kind of two levels here. One is just a baseline. If you're going to make an expensive product, parts, tools, and manuals have to be available. That has to be the baseline.
Yeah.
And then we're working on repairability scoring standards so that you could have a green sticker saying this is a super repairable, long-lasting product. Maybe you want to pay more for a Dualit toaster. Is a British toaster brand that's super repairable and long-lasting. But that's going to be the $200 toaster. So we still have a ways to go. Logitech got an award last night. Logitech is increasingly starting to make products available. They had gone the other way for a while. They had batteries glued into their mice, which is really, you know, it used to be your mouse, your wireless mouse had AA batteries. That was great. Then they glued in the battery. Some of these mice, it'll take an hour to change the battery. I don't know if anyone wants to spend an hour changing the battery in a mouse. Logitech has redesigned their products to making it easier, and we're working with brands, you know, systematically to improve design. Lenovo just released a new ThinkPad that got a 10 out of 10 on our repair scorecard for the first time ever. So we're excited about this. I think there's progress, but yes, we have a ways to go.
We want to, you know, with Circle America, we want to recognize the brands that are doing it right and create that fear of missing out on customers for all of the others. So rather than, you know, attacking the ones that are not doing it, you know, really bring up and raise up the ones that are doing it and call positive attention to them. I'm going to go to Yuly and then to Shawn and then to Sarah, because I want to hear from Sarah on how we publicize and promote all of this. So, Yuly, footwear is a notoriously complex and waste-intensive industry. What does radical reduction mean in that? You've dived into this and you've learned a lot in the years that you've been doing this. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, thank you for the invite, and I have had enormous cool conversations so far, so I'm really excited to be here. So I have dedicated my career in the intersection of fashion, technology, climate, and materials. So I was delighted to hear the example of the scissor, because it's all about this part. So while being the program director of climate in MIT, I was approached by the footwear companies. And it was kind of the movement from the industry that we are doing. The fashion industry has 10% of emissions, but the shoe people was, what about us?
They were what? They were?
The shoe companies were like, we've been talking about fashion, but for shoes it's completely different. So a T-shirt that has one material is completely different for a shoe that has a couple of materials all in.
Because it's an engineered product for so many
It's a wholly engineered product. So fast forward, we hosted a summit in MIT that was called the Circular Shoe Summit. I wasn't so creative.
It's very clear.
And the only reason it happens is because MIT published the first LCA for a shoe in 2010. So we had the privilege to really understand the product, understand recommendations, and think deeply about what could be for the footwear industry as a model for other industries. So I thought it was done. We published a document that is called the Footwear Manifesto. And when I published the Footwear Manifesto, the companies came back and say, well, Dr. Fuentes, we got the manual, but now we need to do it. Which was really encouraging, because it's an industry that was feeling it. It's a tremendous product, but it's a bunch of engineers that if they can make a product in 6 months, we could really make them to reverse engineer all of this faster. So the Footwear Collective was born out of that initiative. We spin it out under the umbrella of RDNA. It's a nonprofit founded by former director of NASA in the Obama administration. And we've been working with 11 companies to really build coalition in understanding the how. So I was really kind of happy about, we talk about the why, the what, the who, but the how needs to be sorted out, and it needs to have proof of concepts that a shoe, which you all have right now and you all care about, could be a model for how do you really change an industry that has a really structured supply chain, but really understanding the pre-competitive space where they can work together, they can make it. Mm-hmm. So that has been the principle. How do you make heavy competitors? So you had in the room the heavy competitors. They're really competing for real estate in your shoes. But how do you make them understand that there is parts of the system, which I'm excited to hear your return system, the repair system, the manufacturing system, what people is doing in their houses with their shoes, as a whole system that will really enable movement for every citizen in planet Earth. We're producing 23 billion pairs of shoes a year. So it's
23 billion
yes.
pairs of shoes.
Every year the industry produces 23 billion pairs of shoes for 8 billions in the planet.
Yeah.
So if you really can create the market, so the market failure of the industry, if you really can create the markets for that, if you can really put the consumer as part of the supply chain, not just as a consumer, you can really start building markets that will allow us to build a system. So today we have the companies working, and they are doing it. We are kind of the coach, and we work with them. We have a project in California where we collected 30,525 pounds of shoes, and we're doing all the logistics to understanding what is going to be really taking care of this and what are the markets to create. And we're also working in Asia with the factories, because guess what? When somebody's making your favorite shoe brand A, the same factory is making in the other line brand B.
Yeah.
So if we can work at the level of manufacturing with the factories, we could really give this industry the ingredients to build that super cool shoe. We still want the cool shoes.
And if you can get one brand to make the full commitment,
we can really understand the pathways that will allow them to really change the way they're doing it. And this is something that is going to take time. But if you do the proof of concept, and so far, so good. So that's what we're doing.
Terrific, terrific. Well, Shawn, you occupy a rather important niche here, because we have a global economy where, you know, we have the consuming countries and we have the manufacturing countries, and we manufacture stuff and then we spread it all around the planet. And the idea of getting all that stuff back is a challenging process. So tell us how it's done, and tell us, how will this evolve? How might this look in 20 years as we begin to get used to a circular system?
Yeah, well, so I work for a company with a platform called ReturnCenter, and we named it that because there's no circle without a return. Otherwise, it's a straight line. And, you know, I think the challenges are, so there's a slide, actually, if you could put the slide up. Reverse logistics is really messy, and typically it's a barrier to a circular economy. It's really, depending on the product, it's really hard to get stuff back once it's been out in the world. And so there are many barriers to that, mostly around logistics in physically moving stuff back to a facility that can do something of use with it. And we are very heavily in the IT asset, or the computer industry, in the electronics industry. We work with OEMs who are trying to comply with extended producer responsibility laws. And I can tell you that, you know, people say, oh, those things, that's a crazy, that doesn't do any good. I can tell you that since 2009, we've worked with this one particular OEM that started a program of a consumer take-back process that has drop-off locations around the country, and then they use our platform to coordinate logistics by the truckload to go back to facilities, all for electronics. And since 2000, I live in Maine. We were the first state in 2004 to pass an EPR law around electronics. We started this with this OEM in 2009. Since then, in only the 25 states that have these laws, we've kept 650 million pounds of electronics out of landfills. But this OEM is a cheapskate, and they only have this set up in the 25 states that have those laws.
Yeah.
Well, that's not exactly a national program, and they only do it in regions where those compliance issues are driving them to spend the money to do that. And I won't name their name, but I would love to. So the tricky bit is, there's a cost, and when there's electronics and computers involved, there's a security risk, and companies are less willing to do that, so they need to wipe it or encrypt it before they ship it. The supply chain in the reverse is really fragmented. There just aren't that many companies that will go out and gather up this stuff, pack it up, put it on a pallet, and ship it back to where it needs to go. And so that fragmentation means that a chain of custody, if there's a security risk, is important and also very difficult to get. And so you can flip that around and say, well, okay, there's a bunch of drivers here too. And the drivers, if you can put together a collection mechanism for whatever the product is, it has to be, and whether it's like we work with OEMs and B2B, but exactly the same principles apply to consumer. It has to be easy, convenient, affordable, or you have to build in a financial incentive to do that. Maybe you're even paying them or giving them some coupon toward a future purchase to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And it has to be efficient enough to where you're not spending more emissions on logistics getting it back than you're saving on reuse. And so there's got to be an impact there that you can measure, quantify, make them not just feel good, but quantify. So a consumer wants to just feel good about it. Great. That pair of shoes made it back and it's going to get reused or refurbished or at least torn down so we can harvest the materials. So there's an environmental impact that you need to communicate so the consumer feels good about it. But corporations, particularly in Europe where there are ESG laws, we can't talk about it in the US, this administration, but in Europe, it's a real thing, and it's driving real change. And those ESG laws means they need to measure the avoided emissions, the avoided landfill, and they need to report it to various frameworks around the world. That quantification is a really big part of letting the OEMs, the manufacturers, prove that they're doing the right thing and complying, and so they can quantify, okay, we put 1 jillion pounds of stuff out into the world and we took back X amount back. It'll probably never be one-to-one, but if you can get close to that, there's a lot you can say about making progress. And then it makes it very obvious who's trying and who's not.
Now, one of the reasons that I know there was years ago, when I was growing up, there was a shift in the beverage market from refillable containers to throwaway containers, and a big driver of that was that the industries were centralizing. We were going from local bottling facilities and smaller breweries to huge centralized facilities, and it wasn't that it was actually less expensive to have throwaway containers. It was more. But a big reason that the shift to throwaway containers happened was because when these big centralized companies would send their products out, if they were refillable, local bottlers would take them and use them and refill them, and it was advantageous to the local. And so is that phenomenon going to happen, or is it happening in a circular economy here? Are there local ways that these products, when they land far from where they were made, where those products can become useful and maybe spawn smaller local companies? So
it's a great point, and that localization of a take-back mechanism is the key to making it easy, convenient, affordable. The less work the consumer has to do to get it into a receptacle to get it back, the more likely you are to be successful. And the more local you can make the processing of that, so you're not shipping, a truckload of cardboard half a state away or something to process it or whatever, the better. So the localization factor, I think, is huge, not only in creating a take-back mechanism, but also in having small facilities that they can go to reprocess, refurbish. And so, for example, there's an organization called Digitunity, digitunity.org, if you want to look it up. They are focused on getting used computers in the hands of the 36 million households that don't have a computer, which means they don't have access to online education, online jobs.
36 million in the U.S.?
In the U.S.
Wow.
only.
Households.
Households,
Wow.
not people, households.
Yeah.
So their whole mission is to divert used computers into the hands of people who don't have one. They have a network of 1,500 local nonprofits who do this kind of work. They're either refurbishers or they're on the front end of taking it from a refurbisher and getting it into the hands of a Boys and Girls Club or disabled veterans or the elderly or whatever the social target is for a particular organization. So one of the projects that we've been working on is to bridge that gap between, let's say, a big enterprise has 1,000 laptops that are coming off service. If they want to donate them, how do they go about doing it? Well, we have a platform that can hook them up to someone like Digitunity, who can find a local refurbisher and a local nonprofit to get it into the hands of the people who need it, and it never leaves the state. So you're not spending a fortune on logistics. You're keeping it all local. It's a local economy. It comes with a 1-year warranty, and it serves a social impact.
Small local enterprise.
So it's like that's like the ESG dream, where you're saving the emissions environmentally, but you're making a social impact, and it happens because that enterprise has a governance, the G of ESG. They have a policy that a certain number of their used equipment is going to go to a social, their communities that they serve, right? And that's where there are ways to win-win-win across the board, but you've got to have mechanisms and a policy and the will really to get it done.
So let me move to Sarah, and Sarah, the interesting thing about the work that you do is that it has appeal to people across the spectrum. When I was telling people that you were on our panel, first of all, I got a surprising number of people who knew you and knew you, personally, because they had experienced you on social media and in the media. And they range from, my favorite MAGA mom in just outside of Chicago to, my favorite woke mom in Nevada City, California. How do you make these ideas about fashion and circularity and sustainability appealing to the everyday person, and how do you create that kind of following?
Well, thank you, Bill. That's very sweet. And I'm very happy to be here. I think this whole conversation in sustainability is a giant pie, and there's a ton of different slices, so I'm honored to be included in that. Redeux Style started out of necessity for me. It started as Redeux Kids, and it was a platform that I started because I was a single mom at the time, and I could not afford things for my daughter. Since then, I'm married and have more children, and it's a lot different, but I just kind of stuck with it. So. To me, sustainability wasn't about, I didn't really know, it's not that I didn't care what my carbon footprint was, I just didn't know what that meant. What I wanted is I wanted the ability to create something beautiful for my daughter. So that's where it all started from, and I have never forgotten that with this platform. So as I've continued on through the years, and I went from doing everything related to children design, upcycling, reworking things, it went into home design, holidays, Halloween, Christmas, Hanukkah, your dinner party, and everyday life. And as I continued to grow with the process and have, things happen in my life, I realized, wow, this is so much more than just style and cool things. Like in these pictures, these are rooms done for under $500 a piece, all upcycled and reworked, a guest bathroom and a laundry lounge. And I found that as I continued to grow with showing people how to rework and reuse and then create beautiful designs in their home, that everybody loves that. Everyone deserves a beautiful home, no matter what their economic background is. This is really for everyone. I don't talk about anything that has to do with anything but sustainability and fun. And the interesting thing is I don't really talk that much about sustainability. I mean, I do in certain ways. Sometimes I'll be like, hey, if you're going to get a mattress for your kid, let's off-gas it, take the plastic off, put it outside for a few days. As a mom, these little things that we can do are incredibly important. But I don't ever get preachy. I talk to everyone. If someone comes at me about something that's more political or whatever it may be, I'm like, I appreciate your opinion. And then I just keep it focused, positive. It's kind of like being a mom. It's like I always say, it's like putting the veggies in the macaroni and cheese. This is supposed to be fun. There's so many incredible people on this panel working towards all the things that matter on the back end, the policy, the manufacturing, all of it, right? But what is being done for the everyday normal person on the other end? So I find that if I keep it really fun and very cool, and I show you how to reuse your silica gel packets, and I show you how to make your kitchen counter look fabulous using all vintage glass, just any little tiny thing that I can do to show people how to rework and reuse and keep things in the circle, I think that's what's really made Redeux Style super popular. People love that. And honestly, I've worked in media for a long time. I started working in media and television long before I was ever an influencer. So it's kind of odd to me to be called that, but I'll take it, right? I'll take it. And I found that I've witnessed so many amazing things happening with storytelling, but I still think there's this bridge that has to be crossed. There's a lot of sustainable stories, right? We've got documentaries about things. We've got all sorts of fun little things that people are doing with different networks and streamers where they're actually having sustainability departments, which is really cool. I talk to people sometimes about what they're doing on the back end. What are we doing with our props and our sets and the green rooms? Like, what are we doing with all that? So for me, it's even though I'm out front and I'm talking about sustainability and I'm showing people how to do things, it's really important to me that I'm a part of every conversation and every little category that I can be when it comes to storytelling. So I'm really hoping that over the next few years that there is some type of, I love design, I love showing people how to rework things, and I love the sustainability aspect of it, and there's a lot of great design shows, but in those design shows there's a lot of waste. So I'm really hoping that over the next few years we can really have some really cool, fun things that come into like sustainable lifestyle design and make it really cool and hip and fun. You know, all those cool, fun words. I sound like a Gen X right now. My kids are going to make fun of me for using all those words. But that's kind of my hope and my goal with Redeux Style, because if I can help the consumer, the people that follow along, think before they do something, just that little moment where they're like, well, you know what, I'm going to hit the thrift store first, right? If I can help them do that, that in turn changes the culture, right? Which then will push industry to make a change. And that's just my little part of the pie that I help, you know, continue that circle.
Yeah. You know, one of the areas that I think that you're really hitting on, which is what interests me, you know, so much about this, is that I've spent my life, you know, understanding the inter-industry dynamics of change. That if retail and consumer brands make a change, then they, because we're in a global economy, they can drive that change across the global supply chain, and everyone will change. But the retail and consumer brands don't necessarily do this of their own volition. They certainly have lots of people in them that care and that want to do these things, but they need the justification of, you know, we're hearing from our customers, and the customers that matter most are maybe the customers that think they are the least powerful, and that is moms. You know, active day-to-day moms. You know, a lot of moms, a lot of women I talk to say, well, I was in the workforce, and then I became irrelevant for 18 years while I raised my kids, and then I got back into the workforce. And I think, no, those were the years that you were raising little $3 million bills, because, you know, every kid is looked at by the consumer culture as $3 million in the course of their lifetimes. That gives you a lot of value there, and you're making the choices. A few moms can change the world. How do we appeal to and draw together those moms? And it doesn't have to be just, you know, the genetic mom, but the person who cares first about their children and the next generations. How do we gather them together and help them understand how powerful they are, and then use them as a positive force for change?
Yeah, well, I think it's about knowledge and raising awareness to what's happening. So this, again, I hope that everyone that works in sustainability, even though a lot of social media gets a bad rap, I hope everyone's using their social media to talk about what they're doing and to talk to people and be authentic in what they're talking about. Because you're not going to get the mom in Iowa or the teacher in Italy using big fancy words and talking about all the fabulous, amazing things that everyone's doing, which are all fabulous and amazing and wonderful, but that's not going to make the shift on the tail end. That helps on this end, but not on that end. So I think making businesses accountable for what they're doing. If you follow on social media and you follow along anything that has to do with sustainability, you will see a ton of fabulous people that go out there and really call businesses out. I'm not going to name any names of the businesses, although I probably should, for just the sheer amount of waste that is created. I'm like, are you even kidding me that that party store over there has so many things in that dumpster? Like, couldn't we have done something better with that? So if you make those videos and they go viral and people see them, moms, teenagers, kids, adults, men, women, whatever, then you're like, wow, you know what? Like, why, what the heck? Beep, beep, company, why are you doing that? And then it's like, you know what? I'm not going to go there anymore. Or you may even approach them and say, hey, listen, you've got all this trash you're throwing out. Couldn't we possibly do something better with that to help underprivileged kids, donating? It's even like restaurants. When I was way younger, I worked as a bartender for a long time. And the food, they were like, oh, we can't donate that. I'm like, why can't you donate it? Like, if we're creating all this waste, we should be doing something better with it, right?
So using our power in social media to publicize these things rather than railing against them necessarily, which I know I've done, you know, just take a picture.
Exactly.
Say, here's the waste. What are you going to do about it? And that creates that pressure. And all of us have connections to probably thousands of people through our own social media channels to do that.
Absolutely. You have so much more ability to reach people than you think. Like literally today, in this day and age, you can go into someone's living room and things go viral. You all have seen it. And it's just about making people accountable, which will turn that change. And then it's about remembering that every little person can make a difference. If I had like 1 million people across my social media, if all of them do 1 to 2 tiny upcycles a year just from following along and paying attention, that's like 2 million pounds of waste kept out of a landfill. You can't tell me that if we continue to grow that type of mindset that things couldn't change tremendously on that end.
And those 1 million people could revolutionize marketplace.
Absolutely, and their children too. My kids, you know, I love the upcycle. Let's just start saying that word. I love the word recycle, but upcycling. What are we doing to keep it in the circle, you know, and fix it, right? We want to fix it.
We
want to make it cool. Like these rooms, like those are Amazon boxes wrapped in peel and stick wallpaper. You know, there's a record player in my laundry lounge. Like, let's make it cool and fun.
So I'm hearing, you know, fun and beauty and cool and relatable. I mean, these are the kinds of things that help it be popular. And it's why people gather to watch these shows about other people who are improving their homes and making them more beautiful.
Yeah, but the fun thing is with Redeux Style is you can watch, like, you know, the DIY shows and it's like, do your kitchen, paint swatches and stuff, and you're like, oh, well, that's nice. If I had money, I'd do that. But not with Redeux Style. Redeux Style, you literally can recreate. I mean, you can do it for, like, if you had $100, I'll challenge anyone to not let me do a room for them for $100, and it will be amazing.
That's a nice challenge. I like that. Challenge.
Yes, I'll take the challenges.
So let's you know, gather together as a group here, and you know, the 5 of you, if you have comments or questions about how you can help each other or how what you're doing fits in with what others are doing, and then I would invite others to also come up with questions or comments that connect this together.
So we've put together some take-back programs, mostly in the electronic space, that involve consumer drop-off points at certain kinds of stores. And that could be a Best Buy, it could be a Staples, Goodwill has drop-offs for lots of things. And at one point, we had a conversation in the shoe industry, and a couple of big brands approached us and like, could we maybe set up a take-back program? And they wanted to do a combination of store drop-offs and coupons that you could, or a QR code you could download and basically ship your shoes back to them. And like, wow, what a great idea. And we spent months with them, and then we got to the dollar sign, like, oh, wow, that's too bad. and it died.
Great idea.
And so there's got to be, you know, I think collaborating between, like, if the shoe industry, the top X number, 5 brands, could get together and agree on, you know, a store that sells, like Foot Locker, or a store that sells shoes, regardless of the brand, drop them off and get together and co-fund a mechanism to take them back, do something with them that's useful, reuse the materials or whatever. That kind of industry collaboration, I think, is what's needed to make it affordable. But you got to talk to your competitors. And in an industry like shoes is very easy I mean, they're probably the easiest, actually, because they're indestructible, as opposed to electronics, which, have to be protected, and if they're scratched, then they lose value and all that. Shoes are not like that. So there are some kinds of commodities that are probably more apt for collaboration, but I think that's one of the things that I think the cross-fertilization of ideas and what works in one sector absolutely works in another. And what we're missing is the oomph among those companies to get together and have that conversation, I think.
Yeah.
I can respond to that. I think yes and yes. So in the collective, we have On Running, Brooks, New Balance, Crocs, Target, Steve Madden, Echo, now all together. And it wasn't, I want to take back to Sarah's and what Nabil was saying, is that the opportunity of the United States, right? So we've been looking a lot about what can happen globally. But I think in the United States, we also have a culture that we need to work with rather than to fight with. And in that culture, business is business, right? So people has to pay the bottom line, and business has to make business. So I think we also have to acknowledge that making it easy with the reverse logistics, making it fun so then people will enjoy. One of the moments for me to put myself and say yes to this challenge that the footwear industry put me on it, because I wasn't me just say, yeah, I'm gonna do this. It was the creation of jobs. So the program we're doing in California, for example, we have 50 stores in Goodwill collecting right now. And Goodwill, think about it, it's one of those 100-year-old companies of the United States that have kept people going buy second-hand, not only shoes, but things, where when they go back to the channel with Sarah, they can buy it in Goodwill. If Goodwill makes money, 95% of that money is about creating jobs. So I think we also have to step back in understanding the triangle of the social impact, the creation of jobs, and what is going to happen to us humans because we do this in a constant culture of the United States. I was born in Chile. In Chile, you use everything. I grew up wearing second-hand clothing, and it was cool. But it wasn't cool because it was cool. It was cool because we didn't have money to buy big brands, right? So necessity also talks. Money talks. The other circle is the environment, right? So this connection with planet Earth. And there are so many strategies in psychology to really make and humanize Earth, Mother Nature, and all that good stuff that psychologists know how to do better to create behavioral change that will be permanent. You either care or you don't. And I think we also need to respect that. And the third part is this performance, right? So when companies are trying to build product has to work.
Yeah.
And if the product doesn't work, which for the shoes is kind of, in the fashion industry has no regulation, but shoes have to work. They are a medical device in many senses. So they have that combination of being in between the cars because they're parts, and between the food because they're ingredients. So hopefully the work that we all do, like maintaining the integrity of manufacturing in the United States, maintaining the consumer having fun, and really be proud of the moment where they do something else with what they wear, building jobs for repair. The cobbler of the United States, do you know how many cobblers are done here because they don't have access to the parts? It's outrageous. We should give them the parts, and we should have people have fun with shoes. And then the reverse logistics, like who is going to pick up the boxes and the warehouses? So I think we need to think about the network of people who is going to get benefits because of the work we do, and we add a little bit in the puzzle. And we also have to stay humble that that little bit could change more. So I think that's kind of the work to keep doing.
Nabil, you've got something? We got about 10 minutes, and I would love to get some comments and questions from the audience.
So I'll just be very quick. I think I'm so glad to see my colleagues here, all the great work that you're doing, because one of the biggest problems that we face is a consumer side. The business to business, people can see the value quickly. They are after, the product. For example, the remanufactured product sells half of the cost of new, so there's a big incentive. And there's a lot of education there. And consumer side is much, much more difficult. So for example, we remanufacture office furniture that work great, and it's the same quality as new and all of that, sold for half the price. You can't do that in the consumer market. There is the consumer awareness. We call it market transformation. It has to happen. So I'm so glad to see all the work that you're all doing. Just one comment is that it has a huge impact. We went to Ghana to look at some of the electronics and some of the product that is actually shipped to Ghana that we count here as recycled, but in reality put in container and shipped around the globe. Kyle knows all about that. And 85% of what they actually get from us is product that are totally functional, that could have been sold as used product and all of this stuff, but we ship a lot of stuff. It's not the screen that's broken. It's not that has any other problem. So there are a lot of room for us to really expand in this area, but it's just great, the work that you're doing related to consumer and educating the consumer, because that is the weakest link that we have, and that's the highest volumes that we have as well.
What comments and questions do folks have? I see one in the back over here. I know for my kids, I mean, they love thrift stores. Every time we go anywhere, instead of going to the mountains, they want to go to the thrift stores, and then they want to discover what's there. Yes.
Hi, all. Thank you. Coco Freeling with Recycle Me. Question for the folks dealing with corporate industry as well. You mentioned, IP address and protection of proprietary property. What have been the conversations and maybe the tipping point in the conversations to get corporate buy-in? Talking to CFOs and folks that are maybe a little farther away from the sustainability conversation. What has that been looking like to actually bring those companies and industry together?
We passed a law, and the AG is going to come after you if you don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish I could be a little more.
That's great. I mean, that's
right. I mean, that's
a good
an
start.
approach, right? I mean, here's a letter from the Attorney General has been helpful, and I mean, we're increasingly working with enforcement in a number of jurisdictions. So that's an option. The hope is that we have a much friendlier conversation, and so that I think is around brand equity, around increasing the customer experience, looking at you say what's the total cost of ownership. Something I don't think we've really talked about here, but I think I could probably decorate a room for $100 if I went to the dollar store and bought a bunch of cheap crap. Right?
But would it look?
It would look terrible by your standards, right? But I could do it. And so we have this tsunami of cheap waste that is almost waste the moment that you get it.
It's true.
Right?
It's like
and the brands, so if you think about the brands are up here, and then you have all this cheap stuff. Amazon sells their tablets in a 6-pack. So when you think about like the products that are at that very low end, the brands need that differentiation between the cheap crap. And so there is an opportunity to say, well, what's part of the brand value? Well, you've got a warranty, you stand behind it, you have customer service, it's repairable, there's an EPR take-back program at the end of life. That is a differentiator that the best brands, your Lenovo's and Google's and others, can do. And so that needs to be part of their brand story.
I will add one more comment. I haven't met a corporation or the people who works in the corporation who wake up and say, I want to make a crappy product. They really want to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. So I think also working with them in really influence the entire, at the end of the day, they're talking to their shareholders, right? So when you talk to the CFO, the conversation, and it's kind of understanding the economics there, is that these models first work with a saving structure, right? So they're going to reduce costs if X and Y and Z happens. And that's kind of what talks to people in the investment community on what is the money that will kind of fix the market in order for the corporations to be able to do the change. But I think the people who is inside those corporations, they're champions. To me, they're heroes in a way that they do have the intentions, but they're blocking that system that doesn't allow them with the CFO conversation to say, at the end of the tunnel, you're going to make money, and if you make less crappy product, that are you working with the margins for the product to be accessible, because we have to make product accessible. Therefore, you could start building kind of the economical model for this in a way. And that's kind of the difference between sustainability and circular economy. Circular economy is building an economy. And I think that has been kind of, to me, the part that has drawn me to build with. that the corporations, they have fiduciary duties to their shareholders. And they're not doing it because they want to be bad. They're doing it because they were building that system.
And I think one of the things, I want to get the next question here, but one of the things that some companies are beginning to do, the lobbying industry has long been an industry that is focused on stopping things. And so it's very good at stopping things, and it's very good at kind of insinuating into and capturing money and opportunities. But not many companies have really gone into the political marketplace to redesign some of the incentives so that they can do more of the right things that they want to do, to redraw the laws when they are perverse, or when they essentially mandate in a competitive economy that you do something that's destructive. But Google is an exception to that, and that, as you said, Kyle, earlier, and we'll hear from Google a little later, in actually advocating laws to help make this business model work, so that everybody is doing it. And I think that's a responsibility that companies are beginning to realize that they have, and an opportunity as well to form really positive relationships with people like those in the room. Yes.
Hey guys, great speakers today so far. Just amazing what you guys are doing. One question I had for you guys, I mean, we're never going to get to 100%. Everything, right? But we do know some industries, like if you buy a new washer and dryer, they come and take the old one. Who wants to get rid of it on their own, right? Some things we have a great process for, and it's interesting. One of you were talking about, there was a day and time when I remember working at a grocery store when I was a teenager. People brought bottles in, their old Coke bottles and all that. We had a process about every hour. You had to go take all those to the back, so the Coke guy, when he came in, would take the old bottles back, and then you
reverse logistics right there.
Right,
So, yeah.
But we were doing stuff back then. But I think one of you mentioned that the bottling industry changed from local to bigger, and then that kind of broke down. So I'm just curious, how much would you say right now is circular, like percentage, where we are, maybe where we were 20 years ago, where we are now, where we project to be 20 years from now, and what's the most problematic part of that? Because we're never going to get to 100. What's the one, if you could push two buttons and say, if we could do these two industries, that would really make the biggest impact? What would you say are the takeaways there?
Who wants to take that one on? Nabil.
What a great question that required like an hour to answer. So there's a group in Europe actually that doing the circularity gaps for countries. And I don't really, the methodologies that looking at circularity, and they claim that they were at 36% in certain countries, and I don't really trust a lot of the analysis that's done, because it's a very difficult to pinpoint to that. So if you take a look, for example, at the US, the first industrialists that realized there was nothing about sustainability, circular economy, or anything at the time was Henry Ford. He discovered that all of the engine that's coming back from his vehicle have significant value left. So he started this biggest remanufacturing company for engines, for Ford engines at the time. A lot of people don't know that Caterpillar was pushed into this remanufacturing business, where are the leaders in the world today, by Ford, because they were buying engine from them. So in any case, so there are sectors where the circularity has been there for many years. In the automotive industry, we remanufacture components, we recycle, we repair. So a lot of work is going on in the automotive industry. In that sector, for example, circularity is good. There are other sectors like electronics, for example. We're still learning how we do this. There are other sectors, many other sectors that haven't even started the journey yet. So it's very difficult to say where we are. Where are the biggest opportunities? The opportunities are, a lot of it is where the volume is and where the consumption is. I'm leading a new project for the United Nations Environment Program now, focusing on consumer electronics, because the highest consumption and highest volume around the globe. So that's where huge opportunity exists. So it's not an easy answer.
Shawn, quickly, and then we have one more question, and then we'll go to lunch.
Right. So just a
or maybe
quick
a
note,
question and a half.
Your grocery store example is the way to the future for a lot of stuff. If you think about EPR legislation around consumer packaging, where do you go to buy that stuff is where you should go to return it and put it back in the loop. And right now, bottles, with a lot of grocery stores have a recycling, take your recycling back there. And in the States that have a bottle bill, like Maine, that's where you drop off your empties when you buy new ones. I think that is also going to be the community hub for all the EPR consumer packaging. Anything you buy at the grocery store, you're going to return there, and that's going to be the collection point. I think those community hubs, the localization of collection, processing, avoiding logistics at all costs, that's in 20 years, I think that's where we're going.
Let's hear these final two questions, one after the other, and then we'll let the group answer them. So yours and then yours.
It's an amazing panel. I wish we could talk all day. So you've mentioned that the B2B circularity has been very effective over the years, automotive, for example. But it seems like the big gap, I think, was noted is in consumer participation. What magical steps can be done to activate the consumers and make it more simple for them to participate in the everyday circular economy?
So how do we make it easy for consumers? And then your question is, here?
I don't need those stinking microphones.
Okay, you obviously don't. There you go.
So Sarah, with your big heart and your big brain, you're able to give somebody with very limited resources a better place to live. For $100, you can do $1,000 worth of beauty. What about the other end of the K economy, where somebody's prepared to and has the resource to spend $1 million on a house? Can you, or do you know of, or is it possible for them to spend $100,000 and then use that other $900,000 for good deeds or Bugatti?
There you go. That's what I want. That's what I want. All right, let's do both questions there. So.
Yeah, that's a great question. So listen, when I started doing all of this, I had no money, like literally no money. And so when I would rework things and take things I already had and upcycle, I'm like crutches into a bookshelf or a diaper changing table into a bar cart. It was out of necessity. So literally figured it out. But now at almost 52 years old, I'm married, we're very successful, and I make a lot of money. You know, I mean, I have money now, but I still do these things. So I still have a home that is able to look the way I want it to look, like I spent a ton of money, but I didn't. I still continue to do this. So really there's space for everyone in this. And it is absolutely 100% possible for someone to follow along with me and have a beautiful home and decorate each room for a tiny fraction of the price. And then, of course, take that money and do something else fabulous with it. I mean, isn't that kind of what we all want, regardless of what your economic background is? And luxury, what's luxury to me 25 years ago, being able to have a $100 watch was luxury, might be different my idea of what luxury is now. So it's really just, you know, however each separate person looks at it. But absolutely, this is I think why Redeux Style is so successful, because it literally is for everyone. It does not really matter. So absolutely. I mean, redo your kitchen for $10,000 and spend the other $700,000 or whatever it is, depending on your level, on other things. So yeah, absolutely, it's 1,000% possible. You should follow Redeux Style, and I'll show you how to do it.
And we will, and we will. And I think that answers the question, or at least part of the question, also about consumers and how we make this worthwhile to consumers. I've long been amazed at how much money people will spend on some little thing in their house, and if they transferred that money to doing something good in a foreign country, they could, you know, save an entire town, you know, save lives and so on. So maybe we make that sexy too. Maybe we make that ability for you to do your kitchen over again and at the same time save a village, you know, in probably 50 miles away if you're in California. So we are about at lunchtime now, so we need to shift for that. Okay, Yuly, or you? Oh, Kyle, have something to say?
I can just say something real fast. We help about 100 million people a year learn how to fix something on iFixit.com. So it could be a toaster, it could be a phone, and our message to folks is, like, it's actually kind of a pain to get a new thing. You've got a lamp that you like, you've got a phone that you like, you got all your contacts on it. Save the planet through sheer laziness. Just hang on to what you've got. My mission is to make it as easy as possible to fix the things you have. I want to make it easier to keep the toaster or the dishwasher that you have than it is to swap it out and get a new one.
Half the time I go to the store these days and I realize it's kind of like just a trigger for what I already have. I go to the store looking for something and I think, you know what, I already have this. I know where it is. It's in the garage. And I go back home and find what I already have. So
the last comment is, people doesn't want to be educated. People wants to live life. So I think we need to start shifting on inspiring people with the work that Sarah and Kyle do. I don't want to learn how to live. I don't want somebody to teach me how to live my life. I want to be inspired to. So I think it's more about the inspiration that builds the mental model of the culture you are living in.
That's so true. That's so true. So, all right. After lunch, we are going to talk about recycling and policy. There are new laws that have been established. It's amazing what is happening in the circular economy. There is real legislation and real money that's going to be spent on this, and we cannot let go. A lot of times advocates pass a law and then they say, "Great, we've won." They go on. But these laws are now going to be implemented, and tens or hundreds of billions of dollars are going to be spent. And we have the ability to ensure that we are spending this money in ways that are investments that pay us back with lower costs and lower impact on the environment. So we're going to learn how to do that. And we're also going to talk about the various technologies of recycling that are emerging and how each of them is interplaying with the others, and how together we can radically increase the amount of materials that we recycle as we also source reduce. So it's lunchtime. Let's thank you very much. And we will see you in about, what is it, an hour?